I found out in the most unusual way. It happened at the start of our annual men's fishing weekend. The guys, Scott, Stan, Roger, and myself, Bob, go up to the lake for our 3-day fishing trip while our wives make it a girls' weekend. We've known each other for many years, and Roger and Mary were our closest friends. Stan was Roger's nephew and several years younger than us, but we welcomed him into our circle of friends. Over time, he became one of my best employees. When Laura and I got married, we were just high school graduates, but I was determined and hardworking. Shortly after graduating, I started a small pool service business, and within 2 years, it had grown to serve over 100 homes with the help of 4 employees. The business continued to thrive, and 20 years later, I was managing over 1,500 homes with a team of 30 dedicated employees, including the invaluable Stan, who proved to be a remarkable asset to the company. Stan's passion, strong work ethic, and fantastic rapport with the team made him an exceptional manager for one of our operations. Recognizing his outstanding contributions, I promoted him, offering a substantial increase in pay and the possibility of future ownership in the company. Our professional relationship flourished into a genuine friendship, and we enjoyed working together. Over the years, I expanded the business, establishing it as the premier pool service company. With the vast majority of homes having pools that required constant care and maintenance, our services were in high demand. Our revenue and profits soared, strengthening the company's position in the market. As the business grew, the importance of financial management became evident. I relied on Howard, a trusted and experienced family member who was a retired tax accountant with a wealth of knowledge in finance. Under his advice, I leveraged all the equity in my home to expand the business when mortgage rates were extremely low. Howard's wife, Beth, was a corporate attorney and suggested placing the company into a trust to protect the assets from liabilities and any potential lawsuits in the future. I followed her advice and became the sole trustee. He, along with his attorney spouse, played a significant role in our success, providing invaluable advice and recommendations that proved to be instrumental in the company's prosperity. On the day we were supposed to leave for our vacation, Laura and her crew of girl pals descended upon our fancy house for a weekend of pure indulgence. As they arrived, I received strict instructions not to disrupt their shenanigans. They were on a mission to have a blast without us husbands around, and boy did I happily oblige. I was more than ready to escape the clutches of girl talk and gossip for the weekend. A fishing trip sounded like paradise after slaving away for weeks running my growing company. The thought of reeling in some big catches and sipping the cold one with the boys was pure heaven. As I left the ladies to their wine-fueled afternoon of giggles and secrets, I couldn't help but think how lucky I was to have Laura and her gang of mischief makers in my life. Sure, they might drive us husbands crazy at times, but deep down, we knew they were the spice that added flavor to our otherwise ordinary days. I couldn't help but smile as I drove over to Roger's house, knowing that the weekend's adventures were just beginning. We had meticulously planned our trip to the lake, aiming to depart at 6 p.m. to reach our destination by 9 p.m. The 3-day excursion promised to be an exciting time, filled with fishing and camaraderie. As we gathered our gear and packed up the car, I suddenly realized that I had forgotten my special fishing lure, which I had been diligently working on in my workshop. For me, fishing was not just a hobby, it was a passion. I took great pride in crafting my fishing lures and tackle combinations, believing that the right equipment could make all the difference in a successful catch. This particular lure I had been working on for the past week held a special significance to me. It was a labor of love, a custom creation that was tailored to attract the biggest fish and bring me joy on the water. Knowing the impact of having the perfect lure, I couldn't think of going on the trip without it. So, I informed my fellow fishing buddies that I needed to retrieve my prized lure before we embarked on our adventure. I jumped in my car at around 5 p.m. and drove the 7+ minutes back to my house, parked behind all the women's cars, and walked to the side door, and quietly made my way down to the workshop, not wanting to disturb the girls or get yelled at for coming home early. Trying to remain quiet, I made my way over to the bench and noticed that I could hear the women chatting. I remember laughing when I realized they were already drunk as they were giggling and having fun. They were sitting in the shade next to the tiki hut, which was at the side of my house. The workbench was just below the outside window and was close enough to hear their conversation. Now, I am not an eavesdropper and couldn't give a crap about their conversation, but when I heard my wife talking about me in bed, my attention perked up. I don't know why, but I thought that I should record this part of the conversation and tease her with it when I got back, so I turned on the recording application on my iPhone. The next few minutes ruined my fishing trip and turned my world upside down. Apparently, I just walked into the middle of a steamy gossip session. The ladies were certainly not holding back, and I couldn't help but chuckle at their candidness. It seemed like they were discussing the not-so-private details of their love lives, and things were getting spicy. Laura, with her mischievous laugh, didn't shy away from dishing out the details about her relationship with her husband, me. I heard her tell the girls how great I was with my tongue, and that I never failed to bring her off and satisfy her after all these years. I couldn't help but think, you go Laura, brag about your stud hubby. She continued,
But it's true what they say. After years of marriage, things might not be as wild as they once were, but hey, it happens to the best of us.
But then, out of nowhere, one of the girls dropped the million-dollar question.
Is that why you did it with Stan?
My ears perked up as I leaned in, curious to see how Laura would respond to that bombshell. The girls were in full detective mode trying to piece together the puzzle of Laura's recent escapades. Laura continued,
No, Bob and I have a good sex life, and he's always satisfied me in that way. I love him and would never intentionally have started anything with Stan. It kind of just happened.
The girls chimed in. Come on, Laura. You cheated on Bob. You can't be that satisfied with your marriage. She responded,
No, you don't understand. My love for Bob is everything. He's not just my man. He's my home, my rest, my heart, and my safe place. And yes, he satisfies me. I love him dearly. This stupid thing with Stan was just a big mistake.
But you said Stan was a great lover, so we assume you had sex with him more than once. We don't get it. Tell us the whole story. She replied,
Girls, anything I tell you has to stay here. The guys would kill Stan, and my husband would kick me to the curb if he found out. I would never hurt him that way. He's such a sweet man, but he would never understand. Do you promise to keep this just between us girls?
I didn't hear anything, but I assumed they all nodded their heads in agreement. She continued,
After Susan dumped Stan last month, he was distraught. He was completely shocked. He was about to ask her to marry him. That afternoon when I saw him at the restaurant, we sat together, and he opened up to me and told me the entire story. Girls, he cried. This big, strong dude was crying, and my heart went out to him. I felt so bad for him, so I sat with him until he calmed down. He was so depressed and upset, I felt almost a motherly need to take care of him.
One of the ladies interrupted, Yes, you're old enough to be his mother. Give us a break, Laura. You had a sexual need to take care of him, not a motherly need. She went,
Well, as it turned out, you're right, but at the time, sex had not crossed my mind. Anyway, he walked me to my car and thanked me for being a good friend and letting him unburden his feelings. I just smiled and gave him a friendly kiss. That's when the spark started. Before I could move away from him, he pulled me close and gave me the sexiest kiss I can remember. It's been years since Bob kissed me like that, and that kiss turned my knees to jello. After we broke the kiss, and without saying a word, he took my hand and led me to his truck, which was parked several rows over, under a shaded tree. Don't ask me why I let him do this. It felt like I was spellbound. Anyway, we sat in the back of his truck and made out like high school sweethearts for the next few minutes. And that's when he told me he always found me so sexy and fantasized about being with me. I have to admit that I was overwhelmed and flush from his compliments.
Roger's wife, Mary, spoke next. Wow, that's hot. We never realized you had that in you. Laura replied,
Me neither. I never thought about doing anything like that before. but it just kind of happened.
That's when Scott's wife, Emily, chimed in. I think all of us girls dream of doing that, but it never happens. Good for you. I'm so jealous. Tell us what happened next. Laura continued to explain that after she came to her senses and realized what she had done, she suddenly felt overcome with guilt, and she knew what she did was wrong and that I would never understand. So she had to make sure it never happened again, and that she told Stan this was a one-time thing, and they could never do anything like that again. So they both agreed it was just a moment of passion and would remain their secret forever. Mary then asked her how did she manage to end up in bed with Stan and turn her husband into a cuckold. Hearing that question turned me into a broken man. I was just humiliated and lost, but I wanted to get enough information as possible, so I managed to continue recording. Laura hesitated her answer, and in a somber voice, she said,
No, please don't think that. Bob is not a cuckold. He'd never allow that to happen. I just made another stupid mistake. I really fucked up and should have known better.
She then explained how Stan had called her to ask her to lunch, and that she had first declined, and told him that they really shouldn't be seen together. But then he said he was depressed and needed someone to talk to, and he felt she was the only one that understood what he was going through, and also offered to make them lunch if she came over to his house for just an hour, and that was how she made another colossal mistake by going to his house alone. Said when she got there, they sat and talked as they ate. After an hour of small talk, he told her how moved he was by their last time together. He was standing next to her as he was about to take their dishes to the sink and kissed her again. This time, it was one of those romantic panty-dropping kisses girls dream about. Long story short, they ended up in his bed for the entire afternoon. She said it wasn't romantic by any means, just raw, and she knew it was wrong. But it just happened, and to be honest, it was the best sex she's had in years, and it was a nice encounter. She said after she showered and got dressed, she did tell him that this would never happen again and not to call her, and then told him he was a wonderful man and needed to find a woman his own age to love. So they both agreed, and that was the last time. Emily had been quiet, but spoke up after Laura's admission. Laura, I'm so jealous. I love Scott as well, but I'd love to give Stan a go. I heard Mary make a low moan as if the story was getting her hot, and she said, That's wild, and poor Bob is clueless. He has no idea about Stan or that you fantasize about him during sex. God, that's so wicked, Laura, but you better fix your head and forget about Stan. Bob's not a stupid man, and you might slip up and hurt him. Laura responded and said,
Don't worry about Bob. I make sure he's taken care of. And trust me, he'll never know about this, and I'll never do it again, I swear. It was a mistake, and living with this guilt has been difficult. To be honest, along with the wine, finally telling someone the entire story is helping me.
I couldn't believe what I had just heard. The shock of Laura's confession had left me in a state of disbelief. I knew I had to leave, to distance myself from the situation, at least for now. So, I picked up my fishing lure, then made my way back to Roger's house. The guys were waiting for my return, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. Tears flowed as I drove. I needed time to process everything, to come to terms with the betrayal I had just discovered. I wasn't ready to face Laura to confront her about what I had learned. I wanted to stick with the original plan, going away for the weekend and seeking solace in a place where I could be alone with my thoughts. But fate seemed to have a cruel sense of humor as I realized I would be spending those days with Stan, the very person who had been involved in the heartbreaking affair. The prospect of being around him only added to my anguish. I didn't know what to expect, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on my mind. Would I be able to keep my emotions in check? Could I face him without strangling him or revealing the devastation I felt inside? At that moment, I felt alone, and I prayed that somehow someday I would find a way to mend my broken heart. When I arrived, Roger was outside loading up his Escalade. As I approached, he could tell there was something wrong, and that my eyes were glassy. I knew I was not ready to say anything, but when he asked what was wrong, I lied that I have a migraine coming on and I just need to shut down for a while. He asked if I was sure, because I looked bad, but I told him I'm used to dealing with this, and that he should just let me sit in the front for the ride, and I'll shut my eyes, and I'm sure I'll be fine. He replied, "Of course, no problem. Why don't you go inside and relax and we'll finish packing. We'll leave in about 30 minutes, and I'll come get you when we're ready." Sure enough, 30 minutes later, I was in the front seat and my buddy Roger took care of me. He took his wife's sleeping eye cover and a pair of his noise-canceling headphones and handed them to me as I sat in the passenger seat while Stan and Scott sat in the back. Along with the blindfold, the headphones put me in a dark place. My sensory perception was now limited to smell, touch, and taste, which allowed me to contemplate this unexpected situation. The guys understood my quietness and offered to help if I needed anything. I couldn't look at Stan, I just kept my eyes shut and thanked them for their understanding. For the next 3 hours, still in that dark place, I was able to sit in peace and contemplate the train wreck I had just witnessed. I thought back to all of our years together, how I worshipped Laura, and felt blessed when she gave me Michael and Katie, our wonderful children. I thought about all the good times we spent together as a family and how that might be over. Tears started and I wiped them away before they became visible. For the first time I can remember, I was struggling and lost. I had no answers or ideas on what to do and must have fallen asleep because the last thing I remember is Roger shaking my shoulder, waking me up at the fishing cabin. For the next 2 days, I was unusually quiet and used my migraine as an excuse. The guys left me alone as I tried not to ruin the trip for Scott and Roger. I continued to struggle with my feelings as I looked at my life, both past and future. It was difficult, but I knew I would survive. 2 days later, still in doubt, I found myself on a trail to the lake alone with Stan. Roger and Scott were going to meet us down at the boat dock. I found myself following Stan through the woods. As I followed him along the path, I heard Laura's words echo in my head, and suddenly, I was full of anger. I noticed a large fallen branch, the size of a large baseball bat on the side of the path. Without thinking, I picked it up, looked at Stan, who was a few feet in front of me, and suddenly charged forward, hitting it hard onto his shoulder. I was going for his head, but at the last second, changed direction and struck his shoulder, making him scream in pain as he fell to the ground. I stood over at him and was just looking down at the man that ducked my wife. He was holding his shoulder as I yelled, "That's for ducking my wife." I then kicked him as hard as I could between his legs and watched him curl up wailing in pain until he blacked out. A few moments later, I came back to my senses and moved him over to a tree and sat him up while he recovered. After he regained consciousness, I told him I knew all about him and Laura, and right now, he's lucky he's still alive. He tried to apologize, claiming it only happened once, but I told him to shut the heck up. I warned him not to talk to me for the rest of the trip, and threatened him not to say one word to Laura about this, and that if he does, he would live to regret it. He again said he was sorry, and that this was all his fault, that I should please take it out on him, not Laura. He said he was hurting from Susan leaving him and Laura was there for him, that it just happened, and she felt guilty afterwards. Out of anger, I kicked him again and asked him to shut up. Just then, Roger and Scott saw us and ran over and pulled me away. They then asked what was going on, but neither of us said anything. Stan was quiet and held his groin in pain. Roger helped him get up, and we went back to the cabin for the next hour. Stan was holding his shoulder, acting all pissed off because I attacked him from behind, and how it wasn't a fair fight. I glared at him and told him to shut up. Then I played the recording for everyone to hear. When the recording ended, Roger screamed at his nephew, "You freaking asshole. You betrayed our friend and the man that gave you a job when you were down and out and took you into his trust. You ducked one of our wives and had the nerve to come with us on this trip, and you're pissed off that Bob hurt you? You should be thankful that we didn't dump your ass in the middle of the lake. We don't want to see or hear from you for the rest of this trip, not one word." Scott then spoke up, "You know, guys, There's another problem with this recording. You heard what my wife and Mary said and how exciting it was. All of our wives were excited about Laura's cheating and keeping it a secret. I don't know about you, but I have a problem with that. And when I get back, Emily and I will be having a serious conversation. Roger replied, "Yeah, you're right, Scott. That was BS and disrespectful to all of us." He then turned to Stan, giving him a death stare, and said, "See what you've done. You've destroyed one marriage and possibly 2 others. Maybe we should dump you in the middle of the lake." Stan just looked down at the floor and remained silent. I then said, "Guys, I agree, they are all involved, but please give me a few days before you do anything. I'll give you a copy of the recording, but I need to confront Laura before she knows what I've learned. Thanks to this asshole, I don't think I can stay with her. I'm definitely going to divorce her. I know I can't be with her. I just need a few days to figure things out." Roger looked over at his nephew and said, "Stan, you're a piece of shit. You will not speak to Laura or the other wives without our approval. If you warn Laura what's about to come down on her, we will make your life a living hell. Right now, if you disappeared, none of us would be upset. You're my nephew and family, which is the only reason I haven't beaten your ass and left you in these woods. Not a word, do you understand?" Stan nodded and understood. Nobody spoke to him again for the entire trip, and he stayed out of the way and avoided any conflict. I just had to figure out what I was going to do with Laura. As we drove back home, I considered everything and wondered how she would have reacted if the roles were reversed. That was it. Suddenly, I had a plan. The plan was to talk about an affair, leading her to think it was me who had the affair, and see how she reacts and what she would do. If she forgave the one-off sex, then I would go gentle on her. However she reacts, it's exactly the way I will treat her. The solution to her infidelity will now be in her own hands. I returned home and pulled into the driveway. I was in a dark place, but it was time to face Laura, and I needed to keep my feelings in check and act normal, which was going to be one of the hardest things I've ever done. I got a warm welcome home when I entered the house. Laura was dressed up and looking nice when she gave me a big hug and an excellent welcome home kiss, which I was going to be missing very soon. I was still pissed, but I stayed calm. My blood was boiling as I thought about what she had done, but the smell of her perfume and the nice dinner she prepared helped calm me down. We had an excellent dinner, and somehow I remained pleasant and listened to her tell me about the last few days. It was still relatively early when she took me up to the bedroom saying she missed me and needed some extra loving. Obviously, she was horny and wanted some intimacy. I smiled to myself knowing what was to come soon. Laura didn't waste time and tried to initiate intimacy, but I couldn't because all I could think of were her affair. As a result, I was unable to proceed. She looked up at me in shock. I could tell she felt hurt by my lack of excitement, so she asked what was wrong with me. It was showtime. I had my phone on the night table recording the audio so that there would not be any misunderstanding of my conversation. I said, "Laura, there's something I need to tell you. There's someone else, and I feel so bad that I just can't perform." She was shocked and looked up at me and asked,
"What do you mean there's someone else?"
I told her sorry, and that it's only been a couple of times, but the sex is so great, I just can't get it out of my head. Her Latin temper flared as I predicted.
"You had sex with someone else, and you can't stop thinking of the sex."
I said, "Well, to be honest, the orgasms were the best ever, and I can't get the thought of all those amazing orgasms out of my head, which is why I couldn't get hard." I phrased the words carefully, not implicating myself, but just repeating her own words from the recording. She was crying, obviously hurt by the thought of the betrayal. Was I being cruel and mean? Maybe, but in reality, I was the victim, not her. I let her continue. In an angry voice, she yelled,
"Well, fuck you. You can just pack your shit and get out. I'm not going to stay married to a cheater. You know my dad cheated on my mom, leaving her a broken woman. I will not let you do that to me. Now get out. I'm going to divorce you and make you pay for this. I've been a perfect wife, I gave you 2 wonderful children, ran the household, made you dinner, and treated you with love, and this is how you repay me.
I almost laughed at her demeanor and comments. She's not going to enjoy this in a few minutes, that's for sure. Laura, it was just sex. Come on, it was just a one-time thing. Are you sure you want a divorce over this? She went,
What do you mean only sex? Are you kidding? I don't believe you, and how do I know if there aren't others? I can't trust you, and yes, I want a divorce, and you're going to pay dearly for this.
I replied, Wow, I didn't expect you to be so heartless and cruel. Like I said, there was no love, it was just sex and only those 2 times. Is this really what you want? Are you sure there's no forgiveness possible? Maybe we can go to counseling. I tried to give her a fighting chance, but she was in fact stacking the odds against herself, and she didn't even know it. She went,
No, we're done. I won't stay married to a cheater. Just pack some of your clothes and get out. Stay with Roger or get a hotel room. But I don't want to see you again. You'll hear from my attorney soon.
I couldn't help myself as I smiled. She had no idea that she had just led herself to her own execution. With venom in her voice, she yelled,
Why do you have that smirk on your face?
I told her that she just made my decision a lot easier. She asked what I meant by that, but I told her to get dressed and come with me, that there's something I would like to show her. She was still pissed and seething, but reluctantly followed me down to my workshop. I had her stand next to the same window where I made the recording. I told her to stay there and not move until I returned. I went outside and synced the car's Bluetooth speaker with my iPhone, then returned to the workshop. She was still angry, but now looked confused as I stood next to her and then hit play on the phone. My cheating wife was even more confused when she heard herself speaking, but continued to listen, and then the expression on her face changed to one of shock. When she heard the conversation, she broke down in tears and fell to her knees. The realization of what had just happened hit her hard. She started to apologize and asked how I got that recording. I said, Well, I'm not sure why that matters, but I had to come back for some things I forgot to pack. I didn't want to disturb you girls, so I came down the back door to avoid your little party. That's when I heard you talking about me in bed. I recorded it because I was going to share it with you and tease you when I got back, but when you confessed to your affair with Stan, I stayed and recorded everything. She cried out loud and said,
Sweetheart, you heard me say it was just the one-off and only sex. You must know there's nothing between us. You have to forgive me. I'm so sorry. You weren't supposed to find out.
For the first time in our marriage, her tears seemed not to affect me. I told her I heard everything and asked her how she could expect me to just brush that aside. I said I can't ignore that, and I can't ever trust her again, and I can't just pretend that everything's okay. She continued crying, saying she didn't mean what she said, that she loves me, and that I give her a chance to explain, and that she didn't mean any of that, and I have to believe her. She then asked what about our 20 years and the kids. I told her I know this is going to be hard, but I can't ignore what she did, and that she should have thought of the kids or our years together when she decided to betray me and our family. I said what she did is unforgivable, and she will have to face the consequences, just like she was so ready to give me punishment for my mistakes. I know some men could forgive their wives for such transgressions, but I couldn't find it within myself to do so. The pain was too great, and the trust that had been broken felt irreparable. Despite my love for her, I couldn't find a way to get past what she had said. All I could do was honor my feelings and emotions, even if it meant letting go of the woman I once loved so deeply. Before leaving, I looked down at her and said, You've broken my heart. Today I lost someone who didn't care about me, but today you lost someone who would have done anything for you. The sounds of begging for forgiveness followed me until I walked away from her for the last time. After that encounter, I made the heartbreaking call to our family and children, letting them know what had transpired between I and Laura. My children, Michael and Katie, offered their understanding and unwavering support. Their lives were forever altered by the fallout, but I was determined to ensure their future was secure, promising to fund their college education and take care of them. I then proceeded to file for divorce as soon as I could and got the papers ready in no time. Meanwhile, the tension was thick as I handed Laura the divorce papers. She pleaded with me to forgive her, but her pleas fell on deaf ears as my heart was too wounded to consider reconciliation. I knew I could never trust her again. The judge that presided over our case and the divorce proceedings became a painful ordeal, with Laura desperately trying to salvage the marriage. In the end, the judge's ruling was swift, granting me a significant portion of the assets and denying any spousal support. At my office, when the other workers found out that Stan had caused my divorce, they treated him like someone with leprosy. They refused to socialize with him and treated him like the asshole he was. He realized he couldn't stay there as they made his life miserable, screwing up jobs, causing complaints, and loss of money, so he decided to find his way out. I'm sure Scott and Roger's wives realized how close they had come to jeopardizing their marriages as Laura did. It was a wake-up call for them, and they understood the value of their husband's forgiveness and the need to respect and cherish their relationships. Laura continued to try to win me back, but I had no intention of ever being with her again. A few months later, I started dating Becky, my secretary, who was more than thrilled to make me happy. She knew I was a good catch, and even though I was 10 years older, she was happy with me. Laura's life took a somber turn as she navigated the aftermath of her failed marriage. She accepted that I would never take her back and found a job as a receptionist at a dental office. She met an older man and began dating. I'm sure in her quiet moments, she would reflect on what could have been, wishing she had made different choices and held onto the life she had with me. I did miss her, but Becky quickly filled that void and made it her mission to be the perfect other half. I loved the young woman's energy, and about a year later, we got married. I hope for the best. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Take care.